is a no bond hearing,
Yes.
so like we're asking that you hold it with no bond right now until the hearing on the 6th, to when we will present evidence in order to satisfy the burden of the 2937-222. We're going to be asking to hold the no bond at that point.
So you all will review those statutes. The
They'll be
rules of
reviewed,
evidence won't apply
Yes, Your Honor.
in that hearing.
Yes, Your Honor.
So the court will now set no bond until Tuesday, when we'll review the statute for a continuing no bond under these unusual and very tragic and terrible circumstances. Where will the defendant be housed, and will he be safe? And I ask that because he was transferred, as I understand it, to Clermont County yesterday.
That's correct.
On my order.
That's correct.
And will he be returned to Clermont County until Tuesday?
It's our understanding he will be returned to Clermont.
And you have a safe environment for him there in Clermont County?
Yes, sir.
You'll return him on Tuesday, May the 6th at 8:30 a.m. for a hearing at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, for the record, we'd ask the court to put a bond on him now, but we understand that it's not a bond hearing.
All right, no bond.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can hold him at no bond for 72 hours, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
What you're watching right now is not just another court proceeding. This is a no bond hearing, and the man in cuffs before the judge is not a career criminal, but a grieving father whose world has been shattered. Rodney Hinton Jr., father of 18-year-old Ryan Hinton, who was killed by Cincinnati police just 2 days earlier. Listen carefully as the judge speaks in cold, procedural language, talking about statutes, bond reviews, safe housing, and court dates. But notice what's missing. There is no mention of the loss this man has endured. No acknowledgement that he is standing there chained, not only as a defendant, but as a father who just buried his child, stripped of dignity, his pain reduced to paperwork and legal codes. Every "yes, sir" echoing back is not respect, it's survival. It's compliance in a system that does not pause to ask how a father should even be standing upright after such tragedy. They speak of safety for him in jail, but gave no safety to his son on the streets. They speak of his return for a hearing, but Ryan Hinton will never return home again. In this moment, what you see is the machinery of justice moving forward, while the humanity of a black father's grief is left behind.
And an incredibly strange twist to this story. Police say the man who hit and killed that deputy this afternoon in Corryville is the father of the man shot and killed yesterday by Cincinnati police. Now, whether the man in the car targeted that officer or this was just an unbelievable, bizarre coincidence, that is really yet to be known. That Cincinnati police officer who killed a man yesterday in East Price Hill says that he thought that his life was in danger when he shot the suspect, and we now know the identity of the man who died yesterday. He was Ryan Hinton, just 18 years old. He was one of 4 men suspected in a car theft earlier yesterday morning. Police shot and killed him when they say that he pointed a gun at an officer. Our David Winter has been following this story since the shots were fired yesterday. He joins us now in studio with a look at the video from the body cam worn by the officer who shot at that suspect. David.
Yeah, Kyle, first I want to tell you that it contains graphic video, so please use discretion in watching this story. It's a lot for younger eyes to see. Now, that said, it's video from the camera of the officer who is running, and it's not overly clear. This, again, is all related to that officer-involved shooting from yesterday. We now know that an Edgewood, Kentucky man reported his Kia SUV, that one right there, stolen early yesterday morning. Police tracked the car's GPS to the Westview condos in East Price Hill. Now, we obtained exclusive video from a resident in the complex. It shows men sleeping in that stolen car right there, and that was at about 9 a.m. A half hour later, police arrived at the scene. In the next 6 seconds, lives would change. Police say the 4 men jumped from the stolen car and ran when they were told to stop. Now, one of those men, Ryan Hinton, was shot by police. This is the gun that he had recovered at the scene, that police recovered at the scene. He also had 2 full magazines and a round in the chamber. Now to the video. First, we are going to show you the body cam video that was worn by that officer who shot and killed Hinton. That will be followed by Chief Thege's answer when I asked whether the suspect pointed his gun at the officer, and then I'm going to help clarify what the chief said.
The officer is running, so the body camera is kind of jolting as the officer's running. What that leaves us with is a very blurred image, unfortunately. However, based on the officer's interviews, the officer who did discharge his firearm said that when the individual came out between the dumpsters, he had the firearm in front of him. He was in like a bladed position, and it was pointed at the officer. And he felt threatened for his life, and that's why he discharged his firearm.
The chief said the suspect was in a bladed position. It's an important distinction, and here's what that terminology means. Let's pretend you're the officer and I'm the suspect. I come running through these dumpsters. When I come out on the other side, I'm pointing my gun at you in a bladed position, threatening you theoretically. I do not need to turn to you and square up in order to threaten you with my gun. All right, well, there will now be a full investigation with the Citizens Complaint Authority and the Hamilton County Prosecutor, which is when we will get a determination of whether the officer acted appropriately. At this point, the chief is implying that he did. Kyle?
Welcome, everyone. I truly appreciate you being here with me today. And before we continue, I want to pause for a moment to say, I'm praying for each and every one of you watching. May you and your families find peace, strength, and safety in these uncertain times. And if you find value in these stories, please remember to subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Now, as we look at this case, I want us to think not just through the lens of law and order, but through the lens of human psychology and philosophy. Because when you see a father in handcuffs only 2 days after his son was killed, you have to ask yourself, what does grief do to the human mind? Psychologists often say that grief is not just sadness. It is a disruption, a tearing away of meaning and stability. And philosophers have long argued that when a person is pushed beyond reason, their actions are shaped more by pain than by logic. This is where we find Rodney Hinton Jr., not only labeled a defendant, but also a father carrying unbearable loss. And the question we must keep in mind is not only what he did, but what drove him to that breaking point.
Yesterday morning, following a report of a stolen vehicle, Cincinnati police officers were involved in a shooting in East Price Hill that resulted in the death of one man. I'm here with Police Chief Teresa Thege, Councilmember Scotty Johnson, City Solicitor Emily Smart-Warner, and Assistant City Manager John Brzezina. We as a city take the loss of life extremely seriously in every circumstance. It is always a tragedy, and it's a tragedy here today. And the processes we have in place because of the collaborative agreement are here to ensure transparency and clarity as we move forward. Thankfully, all the responding officers were unharmed. Thank you, and I will now invite Teresa Thege to speak.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Before I start with the presentation itself, I want to say, when an incident like this one that happened yesterday occurs, the impact is felt long after the moment itself. The emotional toll doesn't end quickly. It lingers with the families, the officers, and the community for an extended period of time. Officers across the country confront dangerous situations every day, sometimes more than once a day. They are often compelled to make split-second decisions to protect others and themselves when faced with immediate threats. Yesterday was one of those occurrences. Let me be very direct. We cannot allow individuals to flee from officers with a loaded firearm aimed at them. When this happens, the outcome is almost always tragic. No one wins, and everyone involved is affected. As I review the sequence of events from yesterday, you'll see exactly how rapidly these things evolved, and it will permanently alter the lives of everyone involved. So to give you an idea, this is 2500 Warsaw going to step out in front for a minute. Warsaw Avenue is down here. This is the long driveway. It goes up a hill. Where the incident occurred is at the dead end of the parking lot back here. You'll see vehicles there now. You'll see a photo. The stolen car that we're going to talk about was backed into a parking spot back there. As you can see, this is a stolen Kia. It was stolen out of northern Kentucky yesterday. You can see we have 2 uniformed cars there. Prior to those uniformed cars arriving, we had 2 undercover cars that pulled into that dead end, saw the vehicle. They backed out. They saw that there were individuals inside the vehicle, so they backed out and let the uniformed cars make the approach, which is the tactically sound decision to do. The cars are positioned the way the officers are trained. We are trained to use our vehicles as cover from any threat. That's what those officers did with the cars at that time. This is body-worn camera from officer number 2. Go ahead, Bobby.
He's got a gun. He's got a gun on your right. On your right. He's got a gun.
So just to give you an idea, we have the 2 uniformed cars. We have 2 officers. There's 4 individuals in the stolen vehicle. All 4 individuals get out and start running, some in different directions. So officers decide which individual they're going to pursue. One officer decides to pursue the individual who we now know had a firearm in his hand. The other officer pursued another occupant that fled from the vehicle, and that'll be significant here in a moment when you see. So this is a still image. Again, I'm going to step out front. The car is parked over this way, okay? They are chasing the individual. So officer number 1 is chasing this guy right here, okay? This is the guy we ultimately end up shooting. The other officer, who actually fires the shot on this individual, is chasing a different individual further out this way, in this direction, okay? As this officer is chasing him, he sees a firearm in his hand, and he yells, "Gun, gun," he's got a gun. This individual slips, trips, whatever, falls on the concrete right here. Other officers that were also there say in their interview, they heard the firearm hit the concrete. They heard the metal from the firearm hit the concrete. This individual gets up, still has the firearm in his hand, and continues to run through the dumpsters. Go ahead, Bobby. So these are some still photos. This is the officer who originally saw him with the firearm in his hand, calling it out. He runs through the dumpsters. This officer knows that there's another officer here that is going to ultimately encounter him when he comes through the dumpsters. So he makes him aware of that. He shouts out to him, "On your right, on your right." He's on your right. And that's where this individual comes out from between the dumpsters. This is the other officer, the one who fires the shot. This is his body camera as he approaches the scene.
He's good. Get the fuck down.
This is the firearm that was recovered at the scene after the individual was shot. This is what he had in his hand while the officers were chasing him. It's just a photo of it here at Criminalistics. Remember I told you he fell on the concrete? The officers said that they heard the metal hit the ground. There are 3 spots on here where this gun has scratches on it. We believe those occurred when he hit the ground.
What type of firearm is that, Chief?
Semi-automatic. I don't know the make and model. This is a second. Sorry, Bobby, can you go back 1 frame, please? This magazine was in the firearm. That's an extended magazine, so it holds more rounds. Go ahead. This is a second magazine that was located in his sweatshirt pocket, his jacket pocket. is the magazine from that second magazine. This is another firearm that was located inside the stolen vehicle. This is a firearm that was also stolen out of northern Kentucky sometime yesterday, early yesterday morning. Approximately, we believe, based on timelines, this was stolen from a vehicle in northern Kentucky, and then they went on to steal the vehicle that's involved in the incident. So because we are still attempting to 100% verify the individual's identity, the individual who we shot, we're going to list him as John Doe.
Now imagine the weight of standing in court, where every eye sees you not as a grieving parent, but as an accused criminal, the silence of the room pressing against your chest, the whispers of strangers carrying judgments you cannot escape. The courtroom becomes less about truth and more about perception, because in human psychology, appearances shape narratives faster than facts. Once the world sees you in handcuffs, they no longer see a father who buried his child, they see only a suspect, and that shift changes everything. The jury, the community, even your own family may begin to question who you are. Philosophers have long argued that justice was meant to hold compassion in one hand and fairness in the other. Yet in modern systems, compassion often disappears, leaving only cold procedure, the kind that measures evidence but ignores emotion. The kind that speaks of balance but forgets humanity. And this is where Rodney found himself, stripped of his story, standing in the shadow of an accusation, and it forces us to ask something deeper. When grief pushes a man to his edge, should we see his actions through punishment or through understanding? Should justice be a hammer that crushes or a mirror that reflects the truth of human suffering? And maybe the hardest truth is this. When a society seeks justice too quickly, it may no longer be justice at all, but simply the comfort of finding someone to blame. The tension in the courtroom was heavy, every sound amplified, the shuffle of papers, the creak of a chair, the quiet murmurs of the crowd, all of it felt like echoes of judgment. For Rodney, this was no longer about truth, but survival, because once the system places you in its grip, it is rarely gentle. Psychologists describe this stage as the point where the human mind begins to fracture under pressure, the brain caught between defending itself and processing grief. And that fracture can make even the innocent appear guilty. And philosophy reminds us that justice without empathy becomes theater, a performance where punishment is more important than understanding. Here, the jury watched, the judge listened, but few could feel the torment of a father whose world had collapsed. The prosecution spoke in absolutes, painting him with strokes of certainty, while his reality was a blur of unanswered questions and unbearable pain. The truth is, grief and rage often walk side by side, and when society only sees the rage, it erases the grief. So the trial itself became less a search for facts and more a struggle of perception. And that's where the real suspense lies. Not in whether Rodney was guilty or innocent, but in whether the system could still see him as human. And then came the moment no one could ignore. The verdict, a single word delivered in a room that had been holding its breath. Guilty, not just a judgment against Rodney, but a final blow to a father already broken. The sound of it tore through the silence like a blade, and in that instant, the weight of grief, rage, and accusation all crashed together. Psychology tells us that the human spirit can endure only so much before it breaks. And here we watched a man not simply tried by law, but condemned by perception, condemned by the story others chose to tell about him. Philosophy reminds us that tragedy is not only in the events themselves, but in how society chooses to respond. And so the true tragedy here is larger than one man. It is about how quickly we turn pain into blame, how often we forget that behind every headline is a human being bleeding in silence. As the gavel struck, the story seemed finished for the court, but for those who witnessed it, questions still linger. Was this justice, or was this another example of a system too eager to punish and too blind to understand? And perhaps the haunting truth is this. Sometimes the real sentence is not the years handed down, but the way a man's humanity is erased in the process.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here this evening. gathered you to give you an update on an incident that you're aware of, I'm sure, happened earlier this afternoon, approximately 1 p.m. We had an auto accident at Martin Luther King, Burnett Woods Drive, where a Hamilton County deputy was struck. He was outside his vehicle conducting traffic enforcement. He was struck by a vehicle. It saddens me tremendously to make you aware that he has since passed. I think what is significant for people to know about this accident is the officer was just out doing his job, directing traffic up near the University of Cincinnati for what was supposed to be a glorious day for many. What is significant also to know about this auto accident, as you know, we had a critical incident yesterday in the city of Cincinnati, an officer-involved shooting at approximately 9 a.m. yesterday morning. There is a connection between these two incidents. The driver of today's vehicle that struck a deputy has a family relationship with the 18-year-old that we shot yesterday. So that is currently under investigation by both our homicide unit as well as the traffic unit. Traffic unit and homicide are jointly investigating the traffic accident. Again, it saddens me to report out that we lost a law enforcement officer in the city today, in this county. My heart goes out to the Hamilton County deputies and the sheriff and her leadership team standing here with me today, and to all the members of their organization. And with that, I'm going to let the sheriff say a few words.
Thank you, Chief. It is a very sad day, and it's a very sad occasion, and the very first thing I want to do is offer my condolences to the family and friends of our deputy. The men and women that you see here behind me all knew our deputy, and he was so well liked and so well known. We could fill this building with the law enforcement agencies that respect him, love him, his friends, his family. We are so deeply saddened. I want to thank the Cincinnati Police Department, Chief Thege, her men and women. As I understand it, one of the first people to reach our deputy and render aid was a Cincinnati police officer. And he worked and did his best for our deputy, and we will forever be bonded for that effort. I want to thank the community for paying attention and supporting us. We need support. Please support us. Please support our deputy.
In the aftermath, long after the verdict and the headlines faded, what remained was the quiet grief of a father. Rodney was left not only with the weight of a sentence, but with the unbearable silence of a home that no longer echoed with his son's voice. Psychologists often remind us that grief is not something you overcome, but something you learn to carry. A wound that never truly closes, but instead reshapes who you are. And in Rodney's case, that wound became a constant reminder of both love and loss. Yet beyond the courtroom and beyond one man's tragedy lies a lesson for all of us. To slow down before we judge. To understand that behind anger there is often unimaginable pain, and that justice without empathy can destroy more than it heals. Philosophy teaches that awareness is the beginning of wisdom, and so awareness is what we must take from this story. Awareness that systems are fallible, that grief can push people to their limits, and that society must find a way to see the human being even in its darkest cases. The legacy of this tragedy is not only in what was lost, but in what we must learn. That true justice is not only about punishment, but about understanding, healing, and awareness. Because without that, we risk repeating the same cycle of pain again and again. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told raw and unfiltered, then stand with us. Hit that subscribe button, share this video, help it reach the people who need to hear it most. Every click, Every share, every comment pushes this truth further than the silence they try to bury it in. Together, we can shine a light on what they want left in the dark. Thank you for watching. Thank you for standing with us. And as always, peace, strength, and blessings to you and your families.